Glazer, and I work with Investor Quarters and REI Live Sarasota. I am so excited to have my broker, my real estate broker with us today, Jill Lyons. She is one of the top property managers in Sarasota and Manatee counties. She manages multiple doors for multiple massive investors in the area, as well as being an investor herself and having those rental properties. So she really does look at it from our perspective, and I can't wait to hear what she has to share about everything going on, because it is definitely an unprecedented time with everything that's happening and all these new regulations. So with that, I'll let Jill take it away.
Perfect. Thank you, Catherine. I have a presentation. I'm going to share my screen with everybody, but if you have questions at any time, it's just easier if you're like me. I'll have a question. If I don't ask it right then I'll forget it. So please, if you have any questions, just unmute and ask me right then. Somebody else might have that same exact question. What most people are asking right now are what's happening with the rental market. We have 450 units that we manage right now. We're only annual rentals, so we don't do any seasonal rentals, so I can't speak as to that market. And our market is from Palmetto all the way down to Venice. So that's my familiarity. We only have 4 tenants of the 450 that are over 30 days notice right now that we haven't received an eviction for already. So I am very impressed with our community that has helped tenants significantly. And I'm also impressed that the tenants really have communicated and every step of the way have told us what's going on. They were slow pay, many of them, but they all are coming through. So it's been what could have been a horrible 6 months really has kind of been, I feel warm and fuzzy about the industry, about our owners being understanding, about the community coming to help. There's a lot more communication for us as property managers, because if you text somebody, where's your rent? And they're afraid that they haven't paid their rent, then they hear it differently than, how can we help you? Can you pay your rent, or do we need to connect you with somebody, So we've gone our extra way and to communicate with those tenants, but it's paid off. We made it through. I was a property manager back in the crash of 2008. So this was my second I don't know what happens in a pandemic either. And now I can say I know what happens during a pandemic, and it's still a great time to be a real estate investor. As far as what I'm going to go through today, I'm going to talk about what's going on with evictions and what I've experienced and what's new and not exciting, but what's new. And then I'm going to go through just 4 things that you absolutely should have on your lease. This is out of order for some reason. Just 1 second. Let me just okay. So today, as far as evictions go, there is a few things that are still affecting leases. There was what was the CARES Act, and that ended at the end of August. However, we are not putting any monies due for CARES properties. And CARES properties means if that owner has a loan that is backed by the federal government. Any rents that are due from August, we do not put in any 3-day notices, because technically they can get thrown out. The judges might require a 30-day notice for those rents. But starting September 1st, we're allowed to put 3-day notices on doors for any rents due for September. So if they owed, which a couple did, if they owed for August, we did not include that on the 3-day notice.
And that's for properties that are owned right out or through a
CARES properties, right? The properties that have a loan on them, that it's not hard money. So if you've gone to a bank and you've gotten the loan at a great rate, then those are probably backed by the federal government. You have to call your service provider to guarantee to see whether they are or they're not, but most likely they are properties that are backed by the federal government.
Okay.
So that's the CARES Act, and that will really be gone by October, because we won't have anybody in our homes that don't owe rent really by that time. We are currently, most of the owners are in agreement. There's been a couple that want to do it differently, but we are not renewing leases. We are keeping everybody month to month right now. You can evict for kicking somebody out, you know, basically letting them know that they have 30 days to leave, that we're not a non-renewal of rent. So if they're in a lease and not paying, they might be able to take advantage of some of the laws and changes and CDC moratoriums and state moratoriums for non-payment of rent. So seeing that we have successfully been able to do evictions on people for non-renewals, we're opting to just keep everything at non-renewal. So we keep our options open for whatever we may need. So that is the CARES Act, and that was not renewed, and the federal government can't come to any agreement, so I don't see them renewing anything to do with CARES in the near future. So what Trump did is he had the CDC give us a moratorium on evictions for non-payment of rent, but what the tenant must do is fill out a declaration page, and it's a 2-page declaration. So if we file an eviction and that's for just non-payment of rent, and the tenant can't pay, and they want to take advantage of the CDC moratorium till the end of the year, they have to file within 5 days for this declaration. And it's a simple 2-page document that says that they can't pay. They make less than $198,000 or 99, depending if they're joint or separate, and they can't make their housing, and they have to show and they have to sign that they are using the best efforts to make timely partial payments that are close to the full month payment as the individual circumstances may permit. They also have to say that they've been made the best efforts to obtain all available government assistance. So the declaration says they can't pay, and they've been doing things to make it pay, you know, to make it so that it's possible that they can pay the rent. And I can tell you for certain, we have several people that we can reach out to that can get their rent paid. So, and there is right now, Sarasota County took their CARES Act money and took $678,000, and tenants are applying. They can apply up to 5 months of rent, and they can give, you know, so they can get that government assistance for the rent as well.
Yay, that's awesome.
It is awesome. It is awesome. I haven't had anybody, I have had a lot of people, it was the application process started September 8th. And so that's when they could apply. They can apply through September 30th or until all the funds are gone, whichever comes first. So those funds are only available till September 30th for a tenant. And they can apply for past rents or current to future rents if they know they're going to have hardship. And they can get up to 5 months of rent paid for. So I don't know personally what the application process is, but we do have several tenants that are applying. Everybody that was late in Sarasota County, we called them, sent them the link, saw how they could get the link, whether they needed it on their phone or their email, so they could all apply on the 8th of September. So we shouldn't have, you know, we shouldn't have any trouble getting the rents in for our tenants, but it's just, you know, we're finding the money elsewhere if they don't have it, which they deserve. They, you know, I mean, there's people going through hard times, and that's what that money from the government is for, is to make sure people can eat and don't have, you know, keep a roof over their head.
Yeah, exactly.
So those are what are hindering evictions. The final thing that is hindering evictions is the state. Our governor has put a moratorium on all evictions, getting the writ of possession. So we can post the 3-day notice and we can file for the eviction, but we can't get the final judgment and the writ of possession until October 1st. And I suspect, I have a feeling he's going to continue and extend that. Luckily, the few that we have applied for non-payments of rent, they haven't responded. So if a tenant, if we file a complaint, they get served their summons and they don't reply for 5 days, then we can get the writ of possession and get them out, the final judgment and the writ of possession, and get the back possession of the home. So even though there's a moratorium, it's only a moratorium if the tenant replies and requests to take advantage of the situation with COVID.
I didn't realize that. That's good to know. So it's not.
I didn't know either, and until we get all of a sudden a writ of, and until the writ's in hand, I didn't believe it. But we have gotten 2 writs in hand for non-payment of rent for tenants that did not reply. We have hearings for tenants that did reply, and they didn't reply with the declaration, and they didn't reply in any other way, and their reply is kind of weak. We're using attorneys right now rather than doing it ourselves because it's more complicated, and they will get a hearing for anything that they reply. So we can't do it ourselves. We have to have an attorney. So it's costing maybe a little bit more to do evictions than it is typically under regular circumstances, but it's been worth it because we're winning. And we're only evicting those tenants that aren't doing the right thing. They can get help. We're not evicting anybody that's sitting there with 3 kids at the home and really is destitute. These people are not even making a phone call to get help. What can we do?
So I have a question for you. With I don't want to say easier because I don't think that there's an easy way to get somebody out of a house, but with the easier in the circumstance way to remove tenants, are you doing shorter lease times and moving to like a 6-month or instead of the annual, or starting new people out on month-to-month basis?
We don't do the shorter lease term. So new tenants that are moving in, we're giving them a year lease. But they have a job right now, and it's a secure job, and it's COVID
proof.
Secure. I mean, they've been paid for the last 6 months, so they're going to be paid for the next 6 months. So if somebody applies and they say they work for a bar, there's no way we'll put them in our place. They don't have a job. They don't have income coming in.
Okay.
So we're being we usually allow tenants to spread the last month's rent over 3 months after they move in. We might be, depending on their job and what they're doing, we might be a little bit more strict and require last month's rent all up front. So just like the banks are kind of tightening up, we're definitely analyzing the applications differently than we would have, especially in regards to their job security.
Okay. Very cool. Okay, that explains it.
Yeah, so I don't know if anybody else has any other questions as far as COVID and evictions and what that all looks like right now before I move on to the main event.
Let's see.
I don't see anybody not muting, so I assume that everything's good. So what I want to kind of discuss today and give you guys tips on 4 lease clauses that you must have on your lease. Our lease, how important is your lease? A lease is the most important document that the landlord has. All of the Florida tenant law, and if you are your own landlord, the tenant landlord law is not that long. I would read it. You have to know it. That is something that you're responsible to know. You can't claim ignorance just because you're not an attorney and you're not a real estate agent. If you're acting and have a landlord hat on, you have to know, and you're responsible to not be ignorant. So you can get into trouble if you don't know the law and you're doing things that are not correct. And honestly, it's not that long. So read it, but the whole entire tenant landlord law protects the tenant. So your lease is what protects you. It's what allows you to regulate and tell the tenant what they're allowed to do and not allowed to do with that property. Our lease is 19 pages long. It has a regular lease, and then we have 4 addendums, sometimes 5 if they have a pet. And it's very comprehensive. It covers everything, and it keeps adding on. We have a lawyer. Actually, I just paid her $1,200 to update our whole lease and add some different clauses. We've had situations over the year that not only us, but I'm a member of NARPM, but other property management companies that all of a sudden have situations that the lease just doesn't cover or isn't very, very specific on. So we'll shout it out, and we have a little board amongst us that we will let each other know, hey, make sure your lease covers this. This just happened. There's flukes that happen constantly. So the lease keeps getting longer and longer based on situations that have happened in Florida for people. NARPM is local, but it's national. So we have a page for Florida, and we have a local page as well. If you are going to self-manage your properties, make sure that you have a lawyer that gives you a good lease. You don't want to go to Office Max and be using a 2-page lease. It's great if everything goes well, but if something goes bad, you have absolutely no leverage. You can't get the person out for doing what you find unacceptable. This is my first time using my my computer, so I apologize. I don't know why it doesn't go where I wanted it to go, because I'm live on TV. The first clause that you must have in your lease is to include a mold addendum. In Florida, there's mold. And as soon as a tenant has mildew in their bathtub because they haven't cleaned it, they'll scream and say, oh my gosh, look, there's black mold in my house. And then they're scared, and they're convinced that everybody in their family has, a cold, and they're dying, and it's because you have a house that has mold in it. And if you don't have any type of a mold addendum, or what happens if they have mold, the tenant can literally stay in your home rent-free until you eradicate whatever mold is or isn't there. And if you have a mold test, there's going to be molds in your homes. There's molds in the air outside of Florida. And whether they're sensitive to it or not, it's, there's some people that are super sensitive to air quality. And if you have a 1950s house that you just rented to a family, they could be super sensitive, and it doesn't have windows that will keep every mold and mildew out. Even if they're not harmful, they could be harmful to them. So you don't want to get in a mold war with any of your tenants. For our lease, if a tenant claims mold and they say it's dangerous, I go there. I don't want anybody to be in any harmful situations. And if there is a mold issue, which there have been mold issues, then we rectify it. If there's not, and this tenant's just being a pain in the butt, or they're super sensitive, or they're super scared, there's nothing I can do to calm them down. I don't want any liability. I don't want any litigation. I don't want any issues. Our mold addendum allows me to terminate the lease within 7 days because the property is deemed not livable, and they are the ones making the claim that there's mold. So it ends the lease. They leave, and we get it tested, prove that it doesn't have mold, and move another tenant in within a week. So that's how we handle it. I not getting in a litigation claim because of mold with anybody. That being said, if there is mold, if there has been leaks, I've had many situations that they just didn't know that there was leaks behind walls and things, and there was a problem being created, but it's rare. Most of the time, it's dirty registers and ACs, or they haven't cleaned their bathroom, and they think that's mold.
And Bob Massanova went into this quite a bit a few weeks ago during his REI Live update. He's a local home inspector that specializes in some of those. He's certified, I believe is the correct term, to go through and mold and test for stuff like that. So if you guys have questions about that, message me. I can send you that recording, or it's on our YouTube channel. So
perfect. Yeah, he does a good job.
Yes.
The other clause that you absolutely want to have in your lease is abandoned property. Legally, in the state of Florida, if you have a house and a tenant has left the property and they leave things there, you have to store it if it's valued at over $500 for 1 year. So if you don't have an abandoned property claim, that we're signing away, your stuff, and after you leave, it's considered abandoned, and we can get rid of it. They can come back and they can say, oh, 3 days later we came back to get that couch and it was gone. Where have you stored it? And it could be a terrible couch and it's over in the dump, And they say, well, there was, my grandmother's diamond that was in that couch, and that's, you're liable for that, and so you have to give us $12,000 for the amount that that diamond is worth. So it doesn't happen often, but it definitely has often happened in the state of Florida. So this abandoned property clause limits that liability, that once they leave and they give you the keys, then that property is considered abandoned immediately. I've had several of these. If a tenant all of a sudden says, yeah, we're going to leave probably Tuesday. Oh, now can we have till Wednesday? Oh, I really like till Friday. And then all of a sudden they drop off the face of the earth and there's still stuff left in the house. And they haven't given you the keys, and they won't text you and say that they have left the house. So that you officially have the home. I always say cover yourself. There's a notice of 10 days, a 10-day notice you can post on the door, so you can have your painters or whoever working on the house, you post it on the door. It tells them either you can put it on a trailer and put it somewhere, or just leave it at the house, that they have 10 days to come get it. Otherwise it's considered abandoned, and they're not there and they're not coming back to get it. You can only use that 10 days if you have an abandoned property clause in your lease. Okay. Other than that, you have to store it for a year. That's just what you have to do legally. If you choose not to, that's fine, but you're opening yourself up to a small claims case that they can sue you for that property. The third clause is security deposits. You have to tell the tenant where their money is, which bank, with an address, and it has to be a bank in Florida. So if you live out of state, you keep it in Bank of America, keep it at Chase, keep it at Wells Fargo. So it's a bank that is here in Florida as well as the rest of the country. You can't use some small Duluth County, credit union to keep the Florida deposits in. You also have to have this exact verbiage in your lease and your security deposit, which tells them how you are going to handle their security deposit. That exact verbiage is required in a Florida lease. It's a long verbiage. If I have my email on the last slide, so if you want that verbiage, I can cut and paste it to you. If you have a lease, and you can make sure that verbiage that's on our screen here is present. But you have to let them know what the chapter states. You have to keep your security deposits in a non-interest bearing separate account. You can't commingle it with other funds unless you do a surety bond. And you have to give that back to them if there is no claim on the security deposit within 15 days. And then if there is a claim on the security deposit, you have to send that to them within 30 days, certified mail, with exactly what is being taken from their security deposit. So that is time sensitive. If all of a sudden you wait 60 days because maybe you don't have everything repaired and you're trying to figure out what exactly it should be, once you go past the 30 days, they get it all back by law, period.
It's crazy.
It is. So it's very important to keep track of all that and the times, and what day do they leave? If they said that they're leaving Monday, but give me an extra day and give me an extra 3 days, you're opening yourself up to which day did they leave. If they never gave you the official keys, take it from the first date, be safe, especially if you want to make claims on their security deposit. If it's over the security deposit and damages anyway, just get it out there. Don't claim all the security deposit. Even if it's more in damages, the chances of you getting that money is slim to none. So unfortunately, it doesn't matter. Yeah. And the final clause that I include is the risk of loss clause. If you have a home and all of a sudden a hurricane comes through and all the windows are broken and everything in their house is damaged, you are technically responsible for everything on that property. And the homeowner's insurance will not, it's a renter dwelling insurance policy. So the contents are not covered in your insurance company, but you're responsible for their stuff unless you have a clause in there that says that you're not responsible for their stuff. I've had tenants that a refrigerator's gone bad and they had $1,000 worth of food in there and they want us to pay for their food. I'll tell them, go to your renter's insurance. They'll help you cover it. Oh, I don't have any. I'm sorry. I really strongly urged you to get it, but that's, if you opted not to, that's fine. But just because the refrigerator went bad, I'm not responsible for your food. There's a plumbing leak and it unfortunately went throughout the house and some things got damaged by water. Their renter's insurance will cover that as well. But you have to specify that you are not responsible for this stuff and they should get renter's insurance if they want their stuff to be covered. There's nothing worse than having to, and they will try regardless, if all of a sudden a tree limb cracks up high and lands on their car, their comprehensive coverage will cover that. But they'll come to you first. They think you're responsible and your risk of loss in the lease will eliminate that without question. They've signed and understood that risk of loss is gone and they're responsible for all their stuff.
Great information.
And then the best option, get all the clauses in the 19 pages and hire us for your property management services. So I know people always ask, what does it mean? Why do I want a property manager? How much does it cost? And it's pretty simple. I can certainly go through more in depth of our property management services if you're interested, but it's a 10% of all rents collected and a half a month's rent placement fee. So that includes listing the property, signing the lease. There's no additional fees that are hidden in our company at all. And really what it does for you is, as at the end of the year, you have all of your accounting on one page, all of your liabilities, everything's already 1099. So we 1099 everybody for you. So your accounting's done, your liability and your risks are taken care of. You don't have to ever talk to a tenant again. It gives you a lot of freedom to do what you really love to do if you don't like property management. And it takes the emotion out. I mean, there's nothing worse. This is your home and your hard-earned cash. So it's hard not to stay emotional with your own stuff. But if you put it in our hands, we're systemized. It's not emotional. No is no, and we take it seriously. And it's just a business that we have to protect you, and that's our job. Period. It's not really that we blame you all the time. So we can follow the letter of the law with kindness to make sure that all of our tenants are in compliance.
No, absolutely. And it really is having a property manager in place is really how you maximize your time. And a lot of investors, especially new investors, forget to analyze what's their time worth. I mean, is their time better spent being bright-eyed and bushy-tailed in the morning or going out and fixing a broken toilet at midnight? Like, where is their time best spent, and what's the payoff and what's the sacrifice and how much are you actually saving if you're going out to fix a toilet for 3 hours at midnight because it's overflowing, or a outdoor water pump and the house is flooding, which was my exercise last weekend. So
yuck.
It was not fun. So there's a lot of different things like that. I know that Judith had a question for you, Jill. She asked, which attorney do you use?
Holly Nikolic and Chad Gates.
Yeah.
Mostly Holly. She's our CFO as well as a Florida attorney. So she does most of our, since she's in-house, she does most of our attorneys. She does all of our evictions, and she loves tenant landlord law. Chad likes closings and things like that more, but I'll call on him and ask him questions. We manage Chad's property, so I use both of them and trust them both for advice.
Yeah. And Deborah said, thank you so much. Great information. So very cool. When you are writing your paragraph that has to be in there for bank, that portion.
Which portion? What do you mean?
Like the bank portion. I saw that you had it underlined Bank of America.
Yes.
Does that have to be a specific bank that you use, or does it just have to be the same bank branch? Does that make sense?
It has to be a Florida bank, and you do have to include the address of where their deposits are. Obviously, the deposits aren't there, but it's a local branch with, that we include on our leases, and that's the branch we go to if we need anything. But it has to be the name of the bank and the address, And if you don't include it on your lease, you have to mail within 15 days after the lease is signed, you have to mail a letter to the tenant with proof that you mailed it on where the security deposit is. And if you haven't done that and don't have proof, and all of a sudden at the end of the lease, they move out and you've claimed money on their security deposit and they fight you on that, say, I never even knew where my security deposit was, and you don't have a receipt and you don't have the proof that it's in a separate account and you don't have, you know, that you told them where it is, they're going to get all their security deposit back.
Even if they trash the place.
Even if they trash the place, you know, you did not handle their security deposits in the way you're supposed to.
Yeah. Okay. Does anyone have any other last minute questions for Jill? I don't see any. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.